We want development where our elderly citizens can leave their homes and downsize and have units available for them to live in the area that they know and love. So what we're looking for is something that is moan-available, number one. Secondly, we want our children to remain here. We don't want them to move out whoop-whoop in order to buy a house. We also want it moan-affordable. And we also want it Mona not so bloody big. We have always been a collection of villages, from Narrabeen, Warriewood, the village of Mona Vale, the village of Collaroy, the village of Avalon, the village of Palm Beach. It's not this is not Bankstown. We've got the Tasman Sea. We've got a thin peninsula that runs up beside Pittwater. And then we have Ku-ring-gai Chase National Park. There's simply not the room for high-rise here. We haven't got the infrastructure. It's just not here. We have a road in and a road out. And the first thing we need to stop is, and come to terms with, is this state significance garbage. What about social significance? What about our well-being? What about our open space? What about our health? What about our history and what about our heritage to conserve what we have built? I like it here. And they'll say, you're a NIMBY. Yes, absolutely. I'm a NIMBY because I will fight to save the peninsula and save Mona Vale. I probably won't do so much for Alice Springs, and I'm pretty sure Alice Springs won't fight for me. Of course we're going to fight what's in our backyard because we understand it and know it and we love it. And we're fighting for our personal well-being. We've got to protect our tree canopy. We've always been low-rise because we built it that way and that's the way we like it. No one wants to talk about lifestyle like it's a dirty word. Oh, you're only protecting your lifestyle. Too right we're protecting our lifestyle because this is the way we built it and this is the way we like it and we're going to fight for it. We're happy for development, but we want to say in it, and we don't want to see this place ruined.
At the start of this whole process, the government robbed us of our voice. They've taken council out of the planning. If there is a state significant development, from 30 days we get 14 days. The developer gets a year, maybe 2 years to put together several thousand pages of submission, and we get 14 days. So we have had development here all along. We just want it to be kept in scale and in the way of the suburb that we came here that we love. Developers are here to put in luxury apartments that multi-millionaires will buy. Nothing affordable about that. We've got a bus service. We don't have a rapid transit system. We'll never get a train track up here. We'll never get new ferries. The only way in and out of this place is 2 streets, right, that are clogged up right now. But the reality of being here is that the place is straining already. If 35% of the rezoned area is developed, it will double the population of Mona Vale itself. That's our village ground to a halt. I'm a bus driver, and that bus is full, so everybody's standing are the people who come into Mona Vale every day, right? If I drive up to a stop, it is unsafe for me to let them get on my bus. But what the state government wants me to do is to tell people to shove back and to squeeze more people on the bus. The only evacuation route for people north of here, Barrenjoey Road, the only other way after that, Mona Vale Road. In 1994, the fire jumped Mona Vale Road and it closed. And the government is saying, oh, just go ahead and do it. Shove more people on your bus.
I'm happy to condemn the Minns government on this pro-developer stance, but I've also got to condemn the Liberal Party, the Libertarians, and others in New South Wales Parliament who continue to support this. There was an opportunity for members to vote in support of the RFS having a significant and overarching say in whether development should be going ahead based on bushfire risk, and both Labor and Liberals voted that down. And that to me says that this is not just pro-development and pro-developer, but it's really development at any cost. And we've heard today it's at a cost to our community, our character, our way of life, and all the other aspects, but it's also even at any cost in terms of risks such as bushfire risk, and we know also building on floodplains, and that all impacts insurance, which has economic, I could go on and on about that issue. But we are seeing doubling down of support for these reforms in New South Wales Parliament constantly, which is some of these reforms don't even make sense. So if we're replacing an apartment block with multiple apartments with effectively, penthouse style apartments, we actually have net less housing. There's a lot of things that are perverse around this, and the core thing is that there is no planning. I don't want a Sydney that's just generic with high rises wherever a developer decided to put in an SSD and suburbs that are disjointed with no character and no planning. We are one of the most beautiful major cities in the Southern Hemisphere, but there's no strategic planning about beautiful different regions. Even in built-up areas like, south of France, for instance, there are cities and then there are areas on peninsulas that are preserved. We have moved up here and we are on the fringe of Sydney for a reason, because we're in a special area and we've chosen to move away from the city. We are developing, but it should be in line with the planning scheme. And then when you move into a house, you can look up the zoning next door and have confidence, okay, well, this is the risk I'm taking. It could go to 4 stories. At the moment, everyone is just being ambushed from left, right and centre in regards to what we can expect in the next coming years in terms of development here.
We've got to get into Parliament, we've got to be there in their face and look them in the eye. Toward the end of the Currawong campaign, my nickname in Macquarie Street was In The Arse. And I'm proud of that. I want that on my headstone when I die. But our next speaker is a former CEO of Pittwater Council. Please welcome Angus Gordon.
We're in a situation, aren't we, where we have got a government that's managed to perfect planning without infrastructure. And if you want to really get a good example, who would build a hospital at the far end of a road that was built in a creek? Because that's what Wakehurst Parkway is. And if you're worried about bushfire, bear in mind that not only does Wakehurst Parkway flood, but so does Pittwater Road, and so does Monavale Road. The new Monavale Road goes through the Samuel Street intersection, which in fact is flood prone. So not only do we have a situation of fire, but also flood. What kind of people is it that thinks this is okay? Much of this area was the infrastructure, and I'm talking about the water supply and sewerage, was designed back in the 1960s. For water supply, for example, goes back earlier than that. But it was all built on the basis of a population growth that was expected at the time, which is in fact about half of what has actually occurred. And so we need to understand that all the design work is in fact way out of date. What does that mean? Well, it means that you'd know this at your place, probably every now and again the water pressure fluctuates and sometimes it disappears. And that's because really the infrastructure isn't there. Our water supply, it comes from Warragamba. It comes from Warragamba down to Ryde pumping station. And you may remember a couple of months ago, they blew up one of the pumps at Ryde trying to get the pressure into the area. And they had a major problem. They were lucky that they had all the tanks full at the time. So we have a situation where the water supply is already stressed. That was demonstrated very well in the 1974 bushfires when they in fact had to turn off the water to whole suburbs to be able to get sufficient water to fight the fires, only the fires at Eleanora, where we lost over 30 houses. So we have an inadequate water supply and it's not been upgraded to match what's already here, let alone anything coming. But it's worse than that, because many people don't realise we have over 1,000 properties in this area that do not have town water supply or sewerage. I'm talking about places that were subdivided 100 years ago, houses that have been there for 40 or 50 years and are still not connected. The fact is, we've got a massive backlog of infrastructure that needs to be attended to. But if you think the infrastructure backlog in water supply is bad, try the sewerage. The Warriewood treatment plant was never designed for the size of population that we have now, let alone extra people. When it rains, they have to bypass the plant and directly discharge into the ocean. Where do they discharge into the ocean? In the surf zone of the beaches. And that's how it is at the present. And that's without even servicing those 1,000 homes that also don't have sewerage. When it rains, the entire yards of those top properties turn into slush. And it's not very good slush because it has pathogens and viruses in it. So we have a total lack of demonstrated understanding of infrastructure by the state government. They just don't get it. And it's not, we can jump up and down about the politicians, but it's not really the politicians. It's actually the advice they're getting from their own people, from the public service. Now, I've been a public servant for many, many years, and I would have to say to you that I'd be ashamed to be part of the public service today. It's unbelievable. It's all about PR, not about delivery of real results. That sewerage works was designed with an ocean outfall. And if you ask Sydney Water and you say to them that was designed with an ocean outfall, it was never built, Sydney Water will say, oh no, that's wrong. Doesn't know what he's talking about. Well, the reason I know what I'm talking about was because I was involved in the design. There was an outfall supposed to be designed and built to take the effluent far enough offshore, the same as the other major outfalls, and that it would allow it to dissipate away from areas where people swim. But as I say, the PR is much more important than the actual engineering and the delivery, apparently. We have major holes in our infrastructure. We have a backlog that needs to be addressed, and that's before we try to cram more people into this area. We're looking at a situation here where we have a totally irresponsible state government. It is negligent to push more people into places where there is not the infrastructure, where it's already well behind where it should be. Negligent. We need to not worry about whether or not we're safe here. We need to really push hard right throughout the state, because we need to ensure that the state government understands that providing infrastructure is the key to planning. Thank you.
Yeah. Well done, Angus. From the river to the sea, we'll be swimming in pee by the look of it.
7,647. That's the number of private homes on the northern beaches that were empty on census night in August 2021. That translates into 7.5% of all northern beaches dwellings. Now, if that doesn't surprise you, how about the number for New South Wales? That's nearly 300,000, or 9.4% of all dwellings, more than the population of Hobart. And for the whole of Australia, it's a bit more than 1 million, or 10.1% of all homes across the country, empty. With the lower medium rise changes, there are no targets. The government just seems to have a policy of squeezing in as many as they can get. So within 800 metres of Mona Vale, the new government rules allow terraces, townhouses and two-storey blocks of units to be built in areas, residential areas that are zoned R2, and with affordable housing, that can be anything up to, and with R3, it can be anything up to probably 9 storeys in unit blocks. It's a developer's bonanza, and we're already seeing plans for buildings of greater height than that submitted to the government as these state significant developments. In fact, for Brookvale, which I know that's not Mona Vale, but at Brookvale, we've already got a submission from the Warringah Mall owners for buildings up to 39 storeys. DAs already approved in Western Sydney are stalling because developers are turning to the North Shore and northern beaches where they can make higher profits because of the higher land values. But I'm 100% sure that this government's development strategy, so-called strategy, is designed with the interest of property developers rather than ordinary people living in the suburbs. Young people still don't want to live in units anyway. That once they have a family, they are moving out of Sydney, up and down the coast and into the hinterlands, because they want a house and garden for them and their kids to grow up in. Putting up an 8-storey block of units in Mona Vale is bound to deliver a higher profit than one in Bathurst. And what's the bet that the $6 million unit by the beach in Mona Vale is bought as a holiday rental or weekender and is empty half the time anyway?
Thanks, Shane. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'll take you back in a bit of a journey in history. Back in February 1985, I don't know who remembers that here, this hall was packed. It was a slightly different configuration. If those who remember the old hall, the stage was up there at the end and not here behind me. But the reason it was packed was because a number of Mona Vale residents groups had sprung up in protest to the idea of having a 10-storey building built in the centre of Mona Vale. And that had gone through fairly quietly through Warringah Council one just before Christmas in December 1984. And only 2 or 3 people had turned up to find out about it and say something about it. It caused a bit of a rift then within the Mona Vale Chamber of Commerce, of which my father was the secretary of, and the president at that point was Max Delmage, who'd put forward this idea, which was also going to benefit him. We're not opposed to development. There's been a great deal of good and smart development through Pittwater over those years. In particular, the original plans for Warriewood Valley and the respect that was given to the creek corridors and the planning around that Angus Gordon, as the general manager of Pittwater Council, had some wonderful ideas there. Of course, state governments successively tried to push back on those plans that Pittwater had come up with largely themselves. Bringing more units to Mona Vale and high-rise is certainly not the housing that we need, and thinking of the next generation coming through and my teenage kids, it's not something that's going to really keep them in the area. Of course, we know it won't be affordable and they wouldn't be able to afford it anyway. That's why I'm here today on behalf of Protect Pittwater, which I'm now the president of. In the last few years, we've been running a campaign to advocate under Section 215 of the Local Government Act to bring back and reinstate Pittwater Council. And the reason I think that's important in this context, and to link it up with what's happening here, is that Pittwater Council was formed with environmental values at its core and as part of its mission statement. That whole instigation of it was that community being unhappy with the planning decisions that were being made further south, not as far south as Macquarie Street as it seems to be happening now. Without that community spirit, without that willingness to take pride in the backyard and not worry about people calling us NIMBYs, and to actually think of the lifestyle and the enjoyment of the area for future generations, we wouldn't have had Pittwater Council. So we're in a campaign at the moment to bring that back, so that we have a council who will advocate strongly for the protection of Mona Vale in particular in this context, but also put those environmental values first and be willing to go up against this state development planning tools, to be able to actively protest against them, to actively object wherever possible, and to really push back against the pressures that are coming from Macquarie Street. This won't go away, this protest, it will only grow stronger and stronger. So let's fight them on the beaches.
To be perfectly honest, we have a state housing problem. And what we have here is not planning. Drawing circles on a map is not planning. It is disappointing that the Minns government has gone down this path. Let the state set the targets, and let the council planning controls, and let the community decide how to achieve those targets. We cannot have Macquarie Street doing it for us. Those circles on a map do not work. Infrastructure has gone backwards across every category under the Minns government. So we're not keeping pace, we're falling behind, but still, Paul Scully is still approving, checking, and allowing these SSDs to proceed. Right now, SSDs are signed off without, I believe, any scrutiny. This is a special place. Apply the intent of the housing reforms that is supposed to fix a problem and not create more problems.
A man who's given most of his life to fighting for his community on many campaigns and has been invaluable on all of them. A man we need to listen to. Can we please welcome to the microphone Mr. Barry Thomas.
I've become an absolute cynic about this whole system. The system's corrupt at every level. Political parties are anathema to democracy. But I've never sat with politicians or bureaucrats who, when discussing strategies, discussing legislation, have ever asked the question, is this in the interests of the citizens of our state? Ever. It's always been in the interests of the financiers, the opportunity for the next job as a politician, the bureaucrats, and the property developers very often. Vested interests and those you're campaigning against will be well funded and will organise opposition community groups. So it wouldn't surprise me that a pop-up group will support development in Mona Vale. The other thing is you're up against consultants these days. Consultants whose only interest is the vast billing they can achieve by working for government. And you're up against them because there's no one left in government who's capable to make any rational judgment. From the time I started being involved in government, which was when I was in my business life, I dealt with a lot of government departments over a long while throughout Australia. And the reality was there were some great people in these departments. The reality is Public Works had talent, had skill, had knowledge, had everything you need to provide infrastructure and services to the country. They decided to privatise everything. So we sold everything off, we privatised things out, and we gave it all to consultants. So there aren't even people in government, in bureaucracy these days, who are capable of deciding what's needed, let alone coming up with a plan to get it. And we absolutely outsourced planning. We gave it away. Who do you think makes these decisions? Who do you think makes the state significant decisions? They're property developers. You know, we love our country, we love our beaches, we love our environment, but we kind of struggle to get off our backsides to participate. We love community, we love our friends. We have children, adult children, young children, but our children who have no time. So we geriatrics have to be the people who step up and consider their future. And that's what you're doing here. Over the past 25 years, billions of dollars have been given to political parties in donation that we don't know who it came from. It's hidden. Billions. It's not small amounts of money. While it is illegal in New South Wales, property developers to donate, there are many ways that can occur in the background. Let me talk a bit about hospital because it's very relevant here. One of the things we found is that every piece of information we were given or provided by health, in those days Northern Area Health, Northern Sydney Health, was incorrect. And in a lot of cases was outright lies because the objective had already been set. The end result had already been set. And all we were was a pain in the arse trying to stop them do what they wanted to do. Now, what did they do? First of all, they wanted to sell the land. That we saved. We mightn't have saved the hospital, but we saved the land. They wanted to privatise it. The beginning of that push for privatisation of health. You ended up with a privately run hospital that had less public facilities, less public services and less public beds than you had before they started. At the same time, population has grown significantly, way beyond what they told us they'd grow, way beyond, and it's going to grow even more with what's happening now. We're a catchment for this hospital, by the way, of health in this area of around about 300,000 people. When you add the actual catchment for Northern Beaches Hospital, it goes to almost 400,000. So because it moves west by putting it there. It was all about taking pressure off Royal North Shore, not giving us health services. Now, Sunshine Coast, what did they do? They did it differently. And what they did differently was they built a level 6 tertiary hospital, co-located with a private hospital. However, all of the other hospitals they had, they actually rejigged, regenerated. They have 5 public hospitals, 3 or 4 of them delivering acute services, i.e. theatres, emergencies in their catchment area. They kept them. What did we do? Yeah, we bulldozed them. If you drive out of this area, head over towards Randwick Way, you pass 4 or 5 level 5 hospitals on the way. The people at Palm Beach are driving as far to that hospital as if they lived at Bondi to go to that hospital. That's the stupidity of this system. And you talk about the need for infrastructure. You need an acute hospital in Mona Vale before this crazy development is even considered. That's absolutely essential. The thing that my great friend here, Shane, taught me, and he definitely did, I tend to be fairly, conservative on some things. The thing he taught me was that you've got to have mongrel in this game. The other point that's really important here is while we have Jackie, who's absolutely on our side, on your side, she's not beholden to any political party. She's only beholden to you, right? The rest of them are beholden to the political engine of which they're part of. They have obligations to the party over their community. They shouldn't. Parties aren't part of our constitution. Parties are created for power. They've tried to stop everything. They've neutered council powers. They've neutered ICAC. They even make it harder to do your protest rallies, but you can do them. Make sure you do them. Keep at it. Thank you.
Well said, Parry.